Anthropic released Claude 4.5 just the other day, and before I really talked about it, I wanted to kick the tires a bit. So I've been using it now for just about a week, and these are my first impressions. I wanted to share with you some of the things that I discovered about it, or kind of my feeling on some of the things they've reported, but really there is one major thing that I want to share. It's the first time that I've used a model, or maybe a model instead of tools is a better way to describe it, that show me what I believe might be the actual future. Now, this is not the answer. I'm not going to tell you Claude 4.5 or Sonnet 4.5 is the brand new model. It's the future of the world. You have to start using it. That's the TLDR here. But it really is that very first step. It's the first time I've used one of these and said, oh, I definitely can see what I need to be able to do with this model next, because it actually performs at a level that could actually possibly do that. I know it's a lot of soft language there, but I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get into it. First, let's talk about, just very briefly, I am not going to go over all the charts, what Claude 4.5 really is, this new Sonnet 4.5 model that they released, and what they're saying about it. That'll kind of help frame the rest of the conversation. Let's dive in. Okay, as all great first impression videos seem to start with in AI, we start with the blog post of what came out. I'm going to cruise through this very briefly, but I wanted to talk about the top level kind of architectural things that Anthropic says this model is and what it released. It's supposedly the world's best coding model, as you can see here. It's the best at using computers, so what we call computer use, or QA. That's kind of it being able to click around on a computer itself and understand how to use a visual system like we would. Checkpoints allows you to roll back to a given point. New context editing and feature memory tools. All right, this is another one that I'll talk about in a bit. This one to me maybe is one of the step changes. The context editing here is actually probably, to me, the most interesting. They're going to be removing things from the context in kind of a laser guided way. So they know some of the things that are in the context. It reads these files. The results of those reads go into your context. So when we talk about your context is only a certain size, everything that it explores and uses goes into its context generally. And that actually is creating this context bloat for information that may not be useful as it continues on during the build. They've noticed this, and what they're doing is this context editing. That's this new term that they're putting forward by saying, I'm going to remove the things that are results of some of these tool calls. And we'll put a token in saying the tool call result was removed, presumably, so if something in the future thinks, oh, but I need the result of that, it'll just perform the action again, rather than it always sticking around in the context. I think this is a really smart move. It really frees up a lot of overhead in our context. They're also externalizing memory. Again, context is essentially the only memory that a model ever has, generally. And if whatever you put in the context is what the model knows about, of course. So they're starting to kind of move toward a file-based RAG solution that says a lot of these memories or ideas that maybe are useful to hold on to, but not absolutely always pass to every step, we'll put into a file-based RAG system, and we'll go query that when we think we need some of that memory to include into the context as we take certain actions. So those two things, I call those out and kind of describe them in detail here, because I think those are really meaningful differences in the way that this 4.5 model works. And once again, one of the things that I think everybody's going to have to start doing something similar to this, I think is a really smart strategy that they added. They talk about agents being able to handle far greater complexity and run much longer. They have examples of it running for up to 30 hours on a single task. And they also are releasing the Agent SDK, which is really how Claude works underneath the covers. So not Claude Code as a unit or a program, but its agent loop and management of tools and memory and other things that you could use in your own programs. That's really fascinating, very worth its own video. But those are the major elements that I wanted to call out that they're releasing that I think make the biggest changes. Okay, so those are the architectural parts. Let's talk about what I built with it, as I've been working with it for about a week on a lot of different tasks, but I really did try to push this long context thing as much as I could, and I gave the same task to both Claude Code with Sonnet 4.5, as well as Codex CLI with the Codex model with GPT-5. And this is not a comparison, but there were some telling points. The PRD itself has a lot of different concerns in it. This system is a Kanban system, a list system, an input system, a multi-input system, a heavy keyboard reliant system. We'll see it in a second. Takes in images. It uses intelligence to pull lists off of the images, has coloring systems and icons icons and has a lot of moving parts. Then you talk about it's using Firebase as its backend database, it's multi-user, it uses OAuth. All of these things were greenfield. How many concerns could it cover all at once? And really what I will say is this is something that I've advised many times, and going forward, this has been a change over time that I would say break down. Don't do it all at once. Figure out the architectural element that you want built. Get that built, write some tests around it, verify that, then move on to the next step, just like a software development team would. But with that 30-hour kind of target sitting out there, I decided let's just shoot for the moon and come up with the big PRD and then just put it all in all at once. So I asked it to kind of set up as much of the cloud responsibility as it could, giving me rules that it would change for the database, creating the database itself, creating as much of the authentication as it could, or walking me through steps to get that accomplished. All of that was part of this PRD that I was asking it to do. So it's kind of a lot. It's not enormous by any stretch, but it's a lot more set of concerns than we would have done a couple months ago, certainly successfully. Okay, let's talk real briefly about what it delivered. Now, the findings here, number one, it is absolutely faster. No question, it's faster than it used to be, faster than the Sonnet 4 model. It's faster than the Codex model. It did stop, curiously, when I gave it this very, very large PRD. It built an aspect of it and then came back and asked questions saying, okay, I've built the first part of this. You can go verify it if you like. Would you like me to continue? Here's some options on the ways we can continue. So I would need to put instructions in my request saying, I want you to work your way all the way through this without interruptions. The way that it's keeping track of its to-dos, all of those things you won't find surprising if you've used Claude Code in the past. But so the system we have is a system that allows us to kind of move items around on a list. It also puts them into a Kanban environment that you can move the items around. You can come in and change them as you see fit, put them in different boxes, those kinds of things. It has a whiteboard mechanism. It also has a set of dictionaries, so all of those different items, you can edit the names of each one of the items and the icons that are associated with each one of those items. Comes with a full setting system. It creates this icebox concept. So it's got this concept of how it might manage the icebox. It has several algorithms internal that it would do that, which is kind of neat. Display preferences of which views you could do. It also went and described the whole data structure that it was going to use. It created multiple indexes that it used on the Firebase database. It did the OAuth integration. It did all the key management. It did, of course, ask me to go get some of this stuff and walk me through steps to do it. This is not a 4.5 is an absolutely brilliant, perfect model. It will solve everything by any stretch. However, the fact that it was covering all of these concerns in a single go is kind of fantastic, that it really took on all of this, did not get lost, and did a great job. The organization of the system underneath is also very clean. It's got a full Playwright system, both end-to-end and unit tests, like at 80-something% coverage by its counting. Even some of the more complex items, like in here, I can come in and paste in an image, and the image may have items on it, like I write items on a whiteboard of different ideas that I might have for videos. And this is my video list. It integrated with intelligence to get the right information off of this. So behind the scenes, it went and implemented OpenAI. All it asked for me was to give it an OpenAI key. If I add all 11 of these items, of course, they drop in, they're on the database, etc., etc. Very exciting kind of work. What I will show, though, interestingly, is I noticed I asked it to go, instead of a multi-line input box, I asked it to go to a single-line input box. And I have a list of things that should be multi-line. For example, that should come in as multi-line, but because I gave it a single input box here, it didn't have good enough testing to cover something like that. Not surprisingly, but it was a later change and it should have covered it with a test and known that it wasn't going to be able to put in a multi-line kind of thing. So what we'll do is we'll ask it to change this to a multi-line object again so that it can take in multi-line things. And then I'll show you the checkpoint rollback mechanism that they have, which is really kind of cool. Okay, so I'm going to give it an image of this input field as well as a test or a definition of what we need to change, as well as kind of asking it why we didn't catch it in test cases, and hope, of course, which I have absolutely all the confidence in the world that it'll catch that and write some tests for us. This model really is that kind of a model. It does not need absolute definition for everything you're asking it to do. It is doing a very good job of acting much more like a participant in building software with you, which is pretty exciting. And even as exciting as that is, that's not the thing that I'm most excited about and what I think this is starting to show me. Oh, while this thing's cooking, I will tell you, like all models, this is worth knowing just so that you can hear it from somebody else that stumbled across it if you've seen this. I had it write something for the Kanban board, the whiteboard system that I was showing you before. It wrote a hook in a place of changes. So it's kind of trying to save the board every time you move something around on the board. And it put it in a place that it would be iterative. And it continued to call itself over and over. And of course, in that place, it's calling the database to do a save. And within a few minutes, I had completely destroyed my quota. I couldn't use Firebase any longer. I noticed what it had done, of course, because everything stopped working, went out to Firebase, added a few pennies into the jar to say, okay, let it give us a little bit more space, went back to the system and said, you need to make sure that this never happens again. Put some kind of queuing system, some debouncer around it, whatever it might be, so that you're never writing that quickly, etc., etc. It said, absolutely no problem. We got through the next hurdle, the very next request in the same context. So that information was still in there. It removed that, same thing, right back to it, killed my quota again. So these things are still not perfect, and this model definitely errs on the same side of other things that I've seen the Sonnet model do in the past. I have a feeling that this is a part of it not being the Opus model in some of those cases, and it's not thinking broadly outside of the paradigm that you're giving it. And I think that that's something that's kind of important, that what it's focused on is what it's doing, and it doesn't quite always see the broader picture. I don't know. This is all very, very subjective, but this was one of my findings. Okay, so it finished cooking. It wrote some tests. Let's take a look at how it did. Let's imagine that I have all of these on my clipboard and I paste them. You can see that it pastes them all in there. That's excellent. We add them, and now we have a bunch of items on here. Brilliant. Let's say we didn't like that change. Let's see what we do with that. Okay, so here we are back in Claude Code. So this is one of the things that they've added that I don't think you can do. I'm pretty sure you can't do in the extension. I'll show you the extension in a second. I just want to show you that real briefly as well, because it's kind of important. But here, if I hit escape twice, I can step back to a change. And if I select this, it will roll back to that point. That's all. So very, very simple, but it allows every time you put in a request here, it will create one of these checkpoints that you can roll back to. So double escape is your friend in this case. But let me show you the extension panel in VS Code or Cursor or something like that, because that's a big change. It's really worth understanding. We can do it real briefly. All right, this is the project, and typically we would come over to this AI panel and pull it open and see that's where the Codex panel lives. At least in my environment, I know I've moved it around and people can move it. So there's also the cursor panel over here because I'm in Cursor, but this would work for VS Code and things like that. All VS Code based editors, this will work for. What you'll need to do is, of course, you'll need to have it installed. I should show that. If you go to the extensions and then you look for Claude, you'll see the Claude Code, VS Code extension here. I think the version 2 extension is the one that turned it into a native extension, and I'll show you what that looks like. You can't get to it unless there's a file that's open. So I'll open the README just because, and you get a little icon up in the panel of the tabs. Where you see the tabs, you'll see an icon that if you hit this, it will open up the new Claude Code panel. And this is a native panel. It's no longer kind of a integrated panel to some terminal system behind the scenes. So it is much faster, more performant. It has the ability to run slash commands. It has the ability to be in different modes here. You can reference the different files that you have in your tabs over here like you always could. It's multimodal as well. If I drop an image in here, then this pastes in like you would normally expect. It's also got a limited set, but it does have access to some of the slash commands that you'd have if you were down in Claude Code. So this is a pretty good panel. I use it a fair bit, but I do find myself dropping back down to the full CLI from time to time to better see what's going on and be able to track what it's doing. Maybe that's just because I'm trying to pay attention to the insides of it. But I would say give this a shot. It's a very good experience. Okay, and that brings us to the last section. Very simple. I wanted to talk about what I think is going on here, what I found, what I discovered while using it. And I'll try to keep this brief because I can really go on about this. I think that there's something very meaningful in this 4.5 release and them kind of creating new patterns to be able to manage context and memory like we talked about. That really is a major, major change, I think. When you see it really work on a very complex set or kind of a multi-concern set of problems all at once and kind of be able to pull that to delivery, you start going, okay, this is going to be different. If I can just put in a large set of requests to an agent system that has a lot of capacity. So Claude Code can do many, many things. As you heard, and I told you I was going to mention this later, that computer use thing that they're saying this model is much better at, I think that's one of the things that we'll start seeing Claude Code, for example, be able to do. Now, what that looks like, how comfortable we are with it just taking over our computers, those kinds of things, or whether or not it builds a VM and can control that VM instead of just our computer, I'm not really sure, but I have a feeling that the best way for this to work to some degree is to move it to the cloud, kind of like Codex Web did, the Codex Cloud solution. I think we'll see a Claude version of that they can spin up their own VM and really bring up a browser, do all of the things that we see ChatGPT doing with ChatGPT agent and that kind of things. So I really think what we're about to embark on is a place where this is not Claude Code, it's Claude solution. And not just Claude, I think Codex and all of the others will really get in line and realize the engineering that it can do is fantastic and it will continue to get better. But once we start attaching all of these other capacities, whether it's through MCPs or native solutions or whatever it might be, computer use, it really starts to be a much bigger system to be able to solve bigger problems. And this is the first time I've seen it. I didn't even use, obviously, any of the computer use stuff or really try to stretch it for 30 hours of running or anything like that. But I can absolutely, for the first time, see this model and say, I have given you, 10 different files. I need you to do a data analysis on it, build out a dashboard, XYZ, some kind of engineering project I might have given it in the past so that I have this dashboard that's really meaningful, and then say, I need you to find a place that you can host that for free, that will be private, that you can share the URL, get the URL, share it with me in email, also email it to these other people so that they can see it, describe that, what the system does, what it's there for, and what they can find in it with inside of that email, etc., etc. I can absolutely see that being part of it. Or go check the previous version that's already out there, see if we're aberrant in some regard, whether some numbers are above something else, email those results to me on the regular basis. Building a system, a solution system out of this rather than a piece of code or engineering one thing, I think is where this goes. And seeing that it can cook for a really long time on a lot of complex problems, and it's starting to really be able to keep track of that, I think we're seeing something here. To me, this is another half step. We were in really very solid cursor land up until March or April or whatever it was. And then we saw Claude Code come out with the 4 models, and that changed everything. That was a full step. We really shifted at that point. And if you were doing it the old thing and hadn't yet seen the new thing, then you were on the wrong side of the puzzle. Then we saw GPT-5 come out. It was interesting. Codex CLI was a pretty good tool, but once they came out with that model, which was maybe a week later, so they had GPT-5 Codex, that was another half step change. It really was performant compared to even all the stuff we were seeing in Claude Code. And now this is yet another. It's another half step, but it maybe is a full step if you take it as it's the first step into the real future engineering that we're about to see. I don't know that this happens by the end of this year. I think parts of it will, but certainly into next year, we start seeing these tools expand in a way that are no longer, I am just going to go build a piece of code. It's, I am going to go build a solution. I've been saying this for a while. I used to write code. I now write solutions. And I think that's the new engineering concept. Sometimes we will still just need to be able to write a single system, a single service to solve a problem. So that doesn't go away, but it also doesn't matter if it looks like that or if it's multi-part. In the past, that mattered. So I think that's the thing this one is showing me, is it's really just a glimpse into what we're about to be using these services for pretty soon. And it does a great job. So should you jump ship? If you have Codex and you've been using that and you're wondering, should I jump over to this because it's got a new model and everything? I'd say no, not yet. Don't worry about it yet. Codex is to me, almost outperforming this model still. That's personal take. There's no evaluation behind that. But multiple times when I thought I was into a problem that was a little complex, I thought, should I just drop to Codex and see if it can do it? Claude certainly solved all of these problems, but that's still in my mind, so you're fine. If you're still on Cursor, not necessarily in the CLI world yet, I would say if you have a subscription to either ChatGPT or Anthropic, just the $20 subscription, please do yourself a favor and go explore one of these things. You don't have to move to it, but just give it a shot. Give it the same problem you might give to Cursor or other systems. You might be surprised at how far along these things have come. So in any case, that's my take. It's only been a week. We'll see where this goes, but I have a feeling with, Google's on the horizon, and as of today, even tomorrow is OpenAI Dev Day. So who knows what's about to come out of that. I think through the end of this year, we're going to see more and more and more of these rapid releases that really step change things. So it's a very exciting time. I hope you found something useful in this. It really was a better exploration than I expected diving into this model. So if you can use it, give it a shot. It's kind of worth it. All right. Thanks for coming along for the ride on this one, and I'll see you in the next one.